Welcome to Bonnie Caroline Makes Cards. I'm excited to be back with a beautiful new release by Simon Says Stamp called Rainbows. This video features the Delicate Outline Flowers background stamp. These two cards were inspired by some beautiful fabric swatches that I was looking at. For this project, I'm working with Arteza Gouache colors. Gouache is closely related to watercolor paint. It has the addition of chalk, and so when it is dry, it has a flat, opaque appearance. And that is the look I'm aiming for to achieve that fabric feel. I begin by embossing my background. When working with these oversized red rubber stamps, I simply place it on my glass mat. The rubber holds securely and I don't have to worry about slippage. I'm working with black watercolor paper called Stonehenge Aqua Gold Press. Two backgrounds are being prepared. One will be embossed with silver embossing powder and the other with gold. The stamp has been inked with Versamark and the paper has been dusted with anti-static powder. Using my whole hand, I apply even pressure across the stamp. To help minimize warping of the paper, I do a couple of things. First, I make sure that the tool is fully heated before I apply it to the paper. Applying the heat to both the front and the back of the panel helps to keep that paper flat as well. For the silver embossed panel, I'm working with a combination of red, teal, and green. Cerulean blue and sap green are mixed together to create the teal color. Two of the flowers are colored in this shade. Because I want an opaque finish, I only add a little bit of water to my brush to help the paint flow smoothly. Before painting the second flower in the teal tone, I introduce Vermilion Red on one of the flowers. I just wanted to get a sense of how these colors were going to work together. Initially, I had to do a little bit of experimenting to find the brush that was going to work best. When painting with gouache that is not being watered down, I find it is best to work with acrylic brushes as opposed to watercolor brushes. I knew I was going to have to push that paint up right against the emboss line, so initially I started with a flat brush but found it too cumbersome and ended up switching to a round. Eventually, I found that a number 4 brush size seemed to work well for the size of spaces that I was painting. I also found that some of the colors were more opaque than others. The Vermilion Red definitely needed a second coat, and I found it best to let the first coat dry completely before applying the second layer. I liked the look of the red-teal combination, so I went back to working on my teal flowers. I added a little bit more blue to my mix to create some variation in color. The painting does take a bit of time, and I was feeling a bit overwhelmed working on the 6x6 panel, so as soon as I trimmed it down to an A2 size, it seemed much more manageable. When all the flowers were painted, I finished up the leaves using sap green. For the gold emboss panel, I chose blue and yellow for the flowers and pale pink for the leaves. The blue flowers are painted with ultramarine. A little bit of white is used to create some variation in the colors between the flowers. Mid-yellow was used to paint the yellow flowers. The yellow, like the red, requires 2 coats of paint to get it fully opaque. Again, I want to mention that the first coat should be left to dry completely. If it is not dry, what happens is the paint gets pushed around and then there's bare gaps. Filling in those gaps can be a little bit tricky to achieve a nice, smooth overall finish. As I mentioned earlier, this card was finished up with pale pink leaves. Initially, I liked the combination of colors, but by the time I had finished painting it, I wasn't exactly sure about this color choice. I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it either. I could have easily left this second card out, but I chose to leave it in because isn't that just the way things go sometimes when you're creating? I used 2 different frame dies from Simon Says Stamps frames to die cut each of the panels. The scalloped frame die was used for the gold embossed panel. This die was also used to cut black sheet foam. The rectangular panel was then mounted on the foam. An A2 size card base was covered with black cardstock before attaching the foam mounted panel. White glue was dotted on the scallop frame and it was fitted around the rectangle. For the silver embossed card, the frame die was also used to cut black sheet foam and silver foil paper. The inner rectangular panel was mounted on the sheet foam. Like the first card, the A2 size card base was covered in black cardstock. The outer frame panel is attached first. I made sure that I checked the orientation to ensure that it was going to be positioned as I wanted it on the card. When applying the glue for the inside panel, I made sure to have a thin line of glue right along the inside border of the outer frame. This will ensure that the silver cardstock frame is well secured. The foam-backed inner panel is adhered. For the silver embossed card, Simon Says Stamps Thank You for Being a Friend die cut is mounted on black sheet foam and adhered to the card. Simon Says Stamps Happy Birthday brush script is also die cut and stacked on black foam before being attached to the gold embossed card. I had a little bit of glue residue on the die cut and I used Couture Creations Detailer to remove it. This is a great and handy tool to have in the craft room. It not only takes care of glue, it also lifts off embossing and foiling that has strayed where you don't want it. To finish up these cards, the stamens on the flowers are embellished with Nouveau crystal drops. Silver lining is used on the silver embossed card and mustard gold for the other one. After adding a few additional embellishments on the panel with the Nouveau drops, I'm done. And that wraps up this video featuring Simon Says Stamps Delicate Outline Flowers background stamp. If you have not worked with gouache, it has many applications and I hope that you'll give it a try. From opaque painting as with these 2 cards, or just applying a nice beautiful color wash, this is a fun product to play with. Be sure to check out all the beautiful new products in Simon Says Stamps' newest release, Rainbows. You will not be disappointed. As always, I appreciate your visit.